structure? I'm audible now, na?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, so the lymph node, the basic structure is there will be cortex and paracortex, and in the cortex there are lymphoid follicles. So it will cause reactive hyperplasia. It will affect the cortical area, and the paracortex, it will affect it in paracortical hyperplasia. So you can see this is the normal cut surface of spleen. So there are two area. These are the white pale area is known as white follicle, and the majority of the portion is red pulp. So the normal weight of the spleen is 150 grams, and it is 5.3 into 1 inches in like dimension. So this is a capsule, HNE section of spleen. This is a capsule, and this is a trabeculae coming out from the capsule. So it divides the spleen into two parts. So majority is red pulp. You can see this red area, and this lymphoid follicle is the white pulp, which corresponds to this pale zone. And so the white pulp will have B lymphocyte and T lymphocytes, and in the red pulp, the majority of the blood cells are sequestered here. So when the weight of the spleen is approximately or more than 1000 gram, there is splenomegaly, and when the length is also more than 20 centimeter. And so whenever there is like systemic inflammation, generalized hematopoietic disorder, any metabolic disturbances, the spleen get involved, and the response it so is by splenomegaly. And as such, the primary disease of the spleen is very rare. So there are four functions of spleen. First is hematopoiesis. It helps in blood cell production, sequestration of red blood cell. It also stored 40 to 40 ml of red blood cell, and it causes phagocytosis of blood cell. And the B cell in the white pulp produce antibody which takes part in immune response. So these are the list of non-neoplastic cause of lymphadenopathy. So there are four categories you should remember. The first one is non-specific reactive hyperplasia, and the second is infection. So among that is bacterial. The most important ones are tuberculosis, atypical mycobacterium, and Bartonella hensleyi. And viral CMV, adenovirus. Like you should go through the table and should remember few causes in each category. Protozoal, toxo, malaria, and trypanosomiasis. And in a spirochete, syphilis, rickettsia. Fungal, it can be histo, crypto. And post-vaccination is also important cause. And like the babies, when they are vaccinated, they show some of them show response as a post-vaccination lymphadenopathy. So then other important cause is due to autoimmune diseases. Many autoimmune diseases has generalized lymphadenopathy as a part of their disease, and the most important ones are rheumatoid and SLE. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. And hypersensitivity, it can be part of a serum sickness or drug reaction, is very important cause of lymphadenopathy. So the drugs like allopurinol used for treatment of gout, isoniazid, anti-leprotic drug, and so on. Then coming to the causes of splenomegaly, the division is same, like infectious causes, among that tuberculosis, CMV, infectious mononucleosis, Kala Azar and malaria are very important cause, and tuberculosis and infectious mononucleosis. So remember some of the most important causes of infectious causes of splenomegaly. They are most frequently asked in the vivas. And congestive state like secondary to cirrhosis of liver, portal vein thrombosis, cardiac failure, and lymphohematogenous will not go through because we are just covering the benign part. And among the autoimmune, the same, like the one which are affecting the lymph node, rheumatoid and SLE. And among the storage disease, Gaucher is very important cause of splenomegaly, and it can present with splenomegaly in few of the cases. So one thing is like hypersplenism. You should remember what is difference between hypersplenism and splenomegaly. They are different terms. So in hypersplenism, the spleen can be of any size. It can be like moderately enlarged, it can be normal, but the function is the function of the spleen is exaggerated. So there will be pancytopenia, because the cells which are sequestered normal, even the healthy blood cells are getting phagocytized and destroyed. So this term is known as hypersplenism. So it has nothing to do with the size, it has to do with the function. So coming to first condition, which is known as reactive follicular hyperplasia, this is non-specific reactive change in the lymph node. So it is a benign reversible change which affects the hyperplastic follicle with secondary germinal center. So it is a B cell response because it causes proliferation of the B cell in the germinal center. It can involve lymph node as well as extranodal site. So what are the causes? Environmental causes can be drug, chemicals, and pollutant. Infectious bacterial is most important cause, and among viral it can be HIV and Epstein virus. Autoimmune causes, and in many cases you will not able to find the etiology, so it's idiopathic. So according to the involvement of the lymph node, you can just suggest ki what can be the probable cause, but you have to take into account everything like clinical feature also. Like cervical, most important infectious bacterial cause is like infectious mononucleosis, posterior cervical toxo, parotid submaxillary and epitrochlear HIV infection, and cervical and axillary cat scratch disease. Inguinal, most important cause is sexually transmitted disease, and supraclavicular mainly it is involved in metastasis and elderly male. So you can see this is a primary follicle of the cortex. This is primary because it has not been stimulated by any antigen, so there is no germinal center. But see, this is stimulated. You have to just know for the cause on the basis of clinical presentation. So this is the pale area germinal center because it has been hyper stimulated. So this lymph node is known as reactive follicular hyperplasia because of presence of numerous germinal center in the follicles. So on the HE, the lymph node will look like this, and the normal unstimulated lymph node looks like this. Am I audible? Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You are audible.
Okay. So what is the presentation? It will present as enlarged lymph node. It can be localized or generalized. There can be systemic symptoms in a form of fever, fatigue, weight loss. And when it is infectious, so in the blood count, you will see leukocytosis, neutrophilia, lymphocytosis, depending on the cause. So greater than 1 centimeter enlargement is, it's abnormal. And painful nodes are related to inflammatory process or hemorrhage. So you have to look, every lymph node, you have to look for the consistency. So soft is basically inflammatory, fluctuant is suppurative, and the mated, the tubercular lymph node are mated. It's characteristically known as mated because they, they just coalesce with each other. And even the metastatic one can also be mated. Firm to hard, it is lymphoma or carcinoma. So now coming to reactive paracortical hyperplasia, in this it is also benign process, but the hyperplasia will be in the paracortical of the lymph node. And the paracortex is rich in T cells, so it is related to T cell immunological response. And mostly it occurs in extra lymphoid tissue like spleen, liver. And lymph node are less commonly involved in paracortical hyperplasia. So etiology is similar, environmental. And drugs are very important cause of, most important cause of reactive paracortical hyperplasia, like phenytoin, anti-seizure medication. Vaccine can also lead to paracortical hyperplasia. And so you have to remember, for reactive paracortical hyperplasia, viral infection is the most important cause. Among that is Epstein-Barr virus, CMV, herpes simplex. And when there is a viral etiology, you can see necrosis in the lymph node. So there is hyperplasia of the paracortical area, and the cortical area is spared. So there will be now admixture of a small lymphocyte, immunocyte, and histiocytes also. And they impart a moth-eaten appearance on HNE section. So what are immunoblasts? They are the large cells with vesicular nuclei and central nucleoli. And eosinophil can be prominent. So when there is eosinophil in the hyperplasia, so there are two etiologies you should always kept in mind: eosinophil hypersensitivity reaction and drug reaction. And both the diseases like reactive paracortical hyperplasia and benign hyperplasia, they are self-limiting. And when you remove the cause, the lymphadenopathy become normal, like it goes off. So you can see this is the paracortical area, and there is hyperplasia of paracortical area, and the cortical area is more or less preserved. And these are the immunoblasts. Because these are immunoblasts, they are immature cells, so they are CD30 positive. Coming to sinus histiocytosis, this is also a reactive pattern. So sinus histiocytosis is basically a part of when there is a carcinoma in the body and the adjacent lymph node are drained. So sinuses beneath the capsule are, see, these are the sinuses, and they are like expanded and filled with histiocytes. So basically sinus histiocytosis is a part of a carcinoma involvement of the draining lymph node. Now coming to chronic granulomatous lymphadenitis. So it is a chronic granulomatous lymphadenitis characterized by granulomatous inflammation involving the lymph node. So there is irritant and there is T cell mediated immunity. And the most common cause of chronic granulomatous lymphadenitis is infectious, and it can also be autoimmune also, or foreign body, like rheumatoid arthritis is very important cause. So most common lymph node involved is cervical. So other causes of chronic granulomatous lymphadenitis can be tuberculosis, leprosy, syphilis, cat scratch, sarcoidosis, Crohn's disease, etc. So on microscopy, like when you excise the lymph node and see on H&E section, you can see two type of granulomas. One is caseating, another one is non-caseating granuloma. Caseating because it will have central necrosis, and non-caseating granulomas, they will have no necrosis. So autoimmune diseases are most common cause. And in caseating, the most important giant cells are Langerhans type of giant cell, whereas in non-caseating, it will have foreign body type of giant cell. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. So coming to most important cause like of chronic granulomatous inflammation is Mycobacterium tuberculosis lymphadenitis. So tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. In few cases, it can be caused by Mycobacterium bovis by drinking infected milk, or can be due to atypical Mycobacterium. So 1/3 of world population is affected by tuberculosis, and most commonly it is common in the underdeveloped nation. So how does it spread? It is spread via inhalation or droplet infection. So there are two types of tuberculosis. Primary tuberculosis, so lung is affected, most common site. But there are second category which is known as extrapulmonary TB. So it's like outside lung, and most important extrapulmonary TB is tuberculous lymphadenitis, meaning that the lymph node is involved as a part of tuberculosis. So it is known as tubercular lymphadenitis is a part of extrapulmonary tuberculosis, and there will be a chronic granulomatous inflammation of lymph node. So what are the risk group? The one who are immunosuppressed, like HIV patient, malnutrition, diabetic, long-term use of steroid, healthcare worker. So presentation will be, this will be painless, progressive swelling of neck, multiple lymph node can be involved. So most important is anterior and posterior cervical node. Other lymph node like supraclavicular, abdominal can also be involved. So what is the mode of spread? It can spread through extrapulmonary TB can spread through the infection of tonsil to cervical node. Like reactivation of the Hilt focus, like meaning like previously the patient was having primary tuberculosis of lung, then it became latent, and then again it got reinfected. So it will involve the lymph node. So from lymph node to mediastinal lymph node, adjacent lymph node like mediastinum is very adjacent, so it will get involved. And in the miliary tuberculosis, there can be generalized lymphadenopathy due to hematogenous spread. In children and adults, there is a slight difference in lymphadenopathy. In children, it can be a part of primary disease, because in children there is Ghon's focus, in which there is involvement of lymph node as a part of a primary infection. So hilar lymph node are involved. So in children, it is like within 6 months they will get tubercular lymphadenitis, and hilar lymph node is most commonly involved. But in adult, it mostly a part of reactivation of the previous infection. So what are the laboratory tests? Most commonly, previously we were using tuberculin skin test. So it is like type 4 hypersensitivity, delayed hypersensitivity reaction, and 90% of the cases of tuberculous lymphadenopathy are positive, and false negative has been seen in HIV. So second method is interferon gamma assay. Now it is replacing this tuberculin test. So it is also very specific for tuberculosis, and some enzyme linked assays are also used, like immunospot. But these are also widely used in Western countries. And microbiological culture also done in. Hello, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. So there are certain molecular tests also, like amplification based method, which is approved in USA, and treatment of all the patient is anti-tubercular drug. So this, you can see, this is a anterior cervical lymphadenopathy. This is known as cold abscess with a draining sinus. And this is a gross excised lymph node. So, hello? Anything wrong? So this is a cut surface of a lymph node. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, ma'am.
Audible.
So this is a cut surface of a tubercular lymph node. So you can see this caseous necrosis. So there are multiple area of cheese-like necrotic area. So you should remember the cut surface will be very cheesy in appearance, and chalky area correspond to calcification. So these are the various stages of cold abscess. So first there will be lymphadenitis, then there will be matting, formation of cold abscess because of abscess formation, and there will be then collar stud abscess, and finally there will be a sinus tract formation. So this is called cold abscess because it is not painful. So this is a classical histology of a chronic granulomatous process. It is a granuloma. Hello. So many background voices are coming. Someone please unmute yourself. Hello, am I audible to you all?
Yes,
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 ma'am.
you are audible.
Someone, please unmute yourself because so much background is coming. Okay, so this is a granuloma, central necrosis. Necrosis will look like pale and granular, pale eosinophilic and granular. So, then necrotic center surrounded by this histiocyte. This is palisading, and outermost is known as lymphocytic cuff. And outside the lymphocytic cuff, there is a fibrous layer. So there are 4 layers of granuloma. And most important differential is atypical Mycobacterium lymphadenitis, histoplasma, and sarcoid. So these are the pale area is a granuloma. So they are coalescing and becoming a large granuloma. And these are Langerhans giant cell in the granuloma. And so you can see this is a necrotic. This is a necrotic area. This is pale and granular. So when we do AFB stain, so necrotic area is best area to find AFB. And in the granulomas and giant cell, you will not see the AFB bacteria. So we use direct staining method are like Carbol Fuchsin stains. So Gill-Nielsen stain is most widely used. Other can be Kenyan. So we use a Carbol Fuchsin stain which stains the lipid wall of the acid-fast organism like Mycobacterium tuberculosis. But when we de-stain it, it doesn't get all the non-acid fast bacteria get decolorized. And when we do contrast stain, the non-acid fast bacteria will pick. So the acid fast bacteria retain Carbol Fuchsin, so they appear red on acid fast staining. Other method are fluorochrome stain like Auromin, Rhodamin. So the bacteria will appear red color against the dark background on fluorescent microscopy. So these are the rod-shaped bacilli. They are somewhat beaded and curved on acid-fast stain, and this is also acid-fast stain, that is Jayden staining. So these are atypical Mycobacterium. So they are a bit larger and more beaded than normal Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So this is splenic involvement of tuberculosis. In a case of miliary or disseminated form of tuberculosis, these are cheesy white appearance nodules of tubercular. These are the tubercular nodules. These are white and cheesy in appearance. So coming to atypical Mycobacterium, it is also known as non-tuberculous Mycobacterium. So mostly the causative the etiology is environmental exposure when and widely distributed in soil. So human to human and animal to human transmission is not known. So human is infected from the environmental sources. So Mycobacterium avium intercellular complex is the most common organism implicated in lymphadenitis. Children 1 to 5 years of age are most commonly affected, and there will be persistent cervical lymphadenopathy, and it can also be seen in immunocompromised patient like AIDS patient. So we diagnose by Jayden stain, or we can do PCR or culture. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, so now coming to cat scratch disease. So this is also known as Parnov oculoglandular syndrome. It is caused by, it is a necrotizing, there will be necrosis. So remember it is a necrotizing inflammation caused by Bartonella hensleyi. And these are small pleomorphic curved gram-negative bacilli, and culture is difficult. So the normal reservoir of this is like healthy cat with fleas, and there is a granuloma formation, and it is due to Th1 response. So it is a self-limited disease with excellent prognosis. It can be localized, the lymphadenopathy can be localized or generalized. So primary there is a skin lesion, and then the regional lymphadenopathy happens 1 to 3 weeks after inoculation. So when there is conjunctivitis with pre-auricular lymphadenopathy, it is known as Perinaud syndrome, and it is a part of a cat scratch infection. So you can see these are the skin lesions, and axillary and cervical lymph node are involved in cat scratch. So this is known as stellate granuloma, which is very classical of cat scratch. It is known as stellate because it is star shaped and it is radiating, and the necrotic area will have neutrophils. This is very important difference from the tuberculosis. Tuberculosis will have neutrophil, but it is very uncommon. So in cat scratch, there will be necrosis, but they will have neutrophil and apoptotic debris and histiocytes. And this is the radiating histiocytes. So the late stage, it is known as stellate necrotizing granuloma because of presence of necrosis. And we use Warden starry stain. This is a silver stain. So these are the bacilli which are evident with the help of this stain. And we could also use IHC antibody. You can see there are cluster of these Hensley organism in the histiocytes. Coming to Kikuchi disease, Kikuchi lymphadenopathy, you should just remember the name because it is a differential of cat scratch. It is also histiocytic and necrotizing. So in the name only it is like necrotizing, and there will be histiocytes in the lymph node at the place where it is causing, it is more common in Asian population. Females are most commonly affected. So most common lymph node affected is cervical, and it undergoes spontaneous resolution. So this is a lymph node. So the involvement is paracortical area in this. So this is a necrosis, and the cause of necrosis is that it is like apoptosis, and it is not related to infection. So there will be no neutrophils. This is a difference from the cat scratch disease. So it is like apoptotic induced necrosis, T cell mediated. So there will be no neutrophil. There will be necrosis, apoptotic debris, and histiocytes. And there will be no neutrophil and eosinophil in Kikuchi disease. Now coming to infectious mononucleosis, it is acute lymphadenitis caused by Epstein-Barr virus, and it is a gamma herpes virus, and 90% of the population and it infects approximately 90% of the population worldwide. So mode of spread is oral contact, and it can mostly immunocompetent adolescent and young adult in USA are affected. So it can present with pharyngitis and tonsillitis. So the pharyngitis is typical picture. It is exudative. It is covered with exudate, and there will be lymphadenopathy. Both anterior and posterior cervical nodes are involved. This is a picture you can see. This is a very prominent lymph node, and anterior swelling in the neck. So pathogenesis is virus. The Epstein-Barr virus infect tonsillar epithelium. And so tonsillar B lymphocyte are involved. So there is first is humoral antibody response, then there is T cell mediated immune response, or CD8 T cell control Epstein-Barr virus infection. So laboratory test, we use monospot test, but it is less accurate, so it is not used nowadays. So we can also be detected by Epstein-Barr virus, and we measure the antibody against the Epstein-Barr virus. So when there is IgM antibody, it represents acute infection, and there will be no so IgM antiviral antigen will be there in the blood, so it is like acute infection. And Epstein-Barr virus DNA, when you can also measure, the DNA in the blood, so it just represent the viral load, and it can be used to monitor Epstein-Barr virus infection. So it is self-limited, but it can be fatal in a case of immunodeficiency patients like HIV. So what is the histology? So basically the process is interfollicular. There will be like interfollicular presence of immunoblasts. So there will be proliferating immunoblasts which are large cell, and they can also mimic. So these cells can mimic Reed-Sternberg cell, but the difference is that the nuclei in the immunoblast are basophilic, whereas in Reed-Sternberg it is eosinophilic. So you should remember this difference. So in the follicle, you can see there is a starry sky appearance, and in the interfollicular area, there are numerous immunoblasts. So there is a numerous proliferation of immunoblasts. These are the large cell, and these are known as immunoblasts. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when you do peripheral smear of this patient, you will see Downey cells. These are the characteristic Downey cell. These are atypical lymphocytes present in infectious mononucleosis. So you should remember there is a proliferation of immunoblast which can look like Reed-Sternberg cell, but they are not like neoplastic. And in the pH, we will get Downey cells. So these are the EBV, LMP, IHC positive because they are EBV infected cells, B cells. So it will be positive for EBV, LMP, immunohistochemistry. And if you do in situ hybridization, so you can pick the EBV infected cells. And so these are B cells. So these are CD20 positive cells. These are large immunoblast cell, and these are CD20 positive and LMP1 positive because of Epstein-Barr virus colonizing in these cells. So this is a spleen involved in infectious mononucleosis. So spleen is involved in 2nd to 3rd week of it's a very rare, but it's a known condition, and it can cause rupture. Splenic rupture can happen in patient of infectious mononucleosis, and you can see that there is a marked expansion of the red pulp, and there is you can hardly see the white pulp. Coming to sarcoid lymphadenopathy, it is a multi-system chronic granulomatous infection. So it is non-infectious cause of granulomatous infection. Lymph node and extranodal site can be involved. It is a diagnosis of inclusion. And genetics, the role of genetics has been suggested because of MHC involvement. And so hilar and mediastinal lymph node are most commonly involved. And spleen can be involved in 20% of the cases grossly, but microscopic, when you do microscopic examination, you can see that 75% of the spleen get involved in sarcoidosis. So they will present with hilar lymphadenopathy. These are the hilar lymph node are enlarged in this imaging. And there are tests which we do to diagnose sarcoid, like there will be angiotensin enzyme will be elevated, CD4-8 ratio will be altered. And so the most important thing is you have to differentiate from tuberculosis. Whenever there is a, like granuloma, we always have to differentiate it from sarcoidosis. So it is a very important differential for tubercular lymphadenitis. So like then this is a sarcoid granuloma. So there is a subtle difference you should remember. So these are the hard granuloma and they are smaller the size of the tubercular granuloma, and they are known as hard granuloma because they are small and closely packed, and they will not show caseous necrosis. They show some of the cases can show fibrinoid necrosis. And there are two type of bodies present. One is steroid body and another is Schaumann body. So you can see this is a Schaumann body. This is due to the presence of, these are concentric calcific lamination. And so you should remember Schaumann body is a concentric lamination composed of calcium, and they can also contain, in some of the cases, 50% of the cases can also show bifringent crystal. When you polarize it, it will show the crystal. And these are the steroid bodies present in the giant cell. They are star-like, like stellate, and they are composed of lipoprotein and calcium and aluminum. So you should remember Schaumann body and steroid body are seen in sarcoid, but it is non-specific. It can be seen in other condition also. And the granulomas are small. They are hard granuloma, no necrosis. Some cases can show fibrinoid necrosis. So coming to HLH. So HLH can be, it can be secondary or inherited. So inherited cause is due to genetic mutation. This I will not go through. So HLH can be a part of secondary causes also. So what is the net result? There is a cytokine dysregulation. So there is overactivation of macrophages and T lymphocytes. So there is a cytokine storm. And acquired, the secondary one can occur at any stage, and the causes I will be telling you. You should remember the secondary causes. So virus is among infectious, virus is the most important cause. So Epstein-Barr virus is most important virus involved in secondary HLH. HLH is known as hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis. So you should remember virus, among virus, Epstein-Barr virus. So there can be other causes like bacterial, parasites, fungi, and autoimmune disorder, SLE, rheumatoid, Still's disease, and malignancy. So malignancy, I'm not going through the genetic causes, and it can also be secondary to post-transplantation. So there are certain criteria. So this patient will have fever more than 7 days, and they can also have a splenomegaly. Am I audible to you all? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. So this is a lymph node involved by HLH. So you can see this is a sinus histiocytosis, and the sinuses are infiltrated by histiocytes because there is overactive T lymphocyte and macrophage. So basically there is a macrophage activation. So all the organs are infiltrated by macrophages. So it can involve lymph node, liver, spleen, and bone marrow. And there will be like lymphocytic and histiocytic infiltration. And one of the feature of this disease is that they show erythrophagocytosis. Inside the lymphocyte, histiocyte cytoplasm, you will see RBC. So they engulf the RBC, and this phenomenon is known as erythrophagocytosis. So there will be histiocytic infiltration, and the histiocyte will show erythrophagocytosis. So these are CD68 positive in the bone marrow because they are histiocytes. So treatment is, you have to know the underlying cause for the secondary cases. Coming to malaria. So these were the lymph node in benign condition affecting the lymph node. So some were infectious and some were like non-infectious, and among non-infectious it was sarcoid is the most important cause of lymphadenopathy, chronic granulomatous lymphadenopathy. So now I am coming to splenomegaly. So malaria is a very important cause causing massive splenomegaly. So what is the cause? There is a malaria parasitemia. So this happens in non-immune individual and mostly with Plasmodium falciparum. So there will be like marked expansion of the red pulp. There will be vascular congestion, and macrophages containing malarial pigment will be deposited in the red pulp. So basically what's happened, these parasitized RBC get trapped and get destroyed in the spleen because of, and so they elicit splenomegaly because of immunological response. So in the endemic area now, this spleen enlarges and the syndrome is called tropical splenomegaly syndrome, and the name now has been changed to hyperactive malaria splenomegaly. So it happens in endemic area, and when there is chronic antigenic stimulation by malarial parasite, so it develops in subject who are long exposed to malarial parasite. So there will be like antigenic response, and there will be immunoglobulin production, especially IgM. They get formed and accumulated in the reticular endothelial system, and so there is a persistent and massive splenomegaly. So this is a spleen, there is a splenomegaly, and this is, you can note the color of the spleen. It is like gray color due to deposit of malarial pigment. And if you see the section, this is a red pulp. You can see these are the pigment deposited in the red blood cell. Organism can sometime be demonstrated under the oil immersion, but it is quite difficult. So there will be like red pulp expansion, and there will be malarial pigment in the RBC. So coming to Kala-Azar, it is also known as visceral leishmaniasis. So it is also a very important cause of massive splenomegaly. So it is caused by leishmaniasis, is caused by protozoa parasite Leishmania donovani. And so there are two forms, pro-mastigate form and amastigate form. So like for in human body, we get amastigate form. So you will never encounter pro-mastigate because it is found in the vector. And in the human host, we generally in the bone marrow aspirate, we get amastigate form. So visceral is one of the manifestation of Kala-Azar is visceral leishmaniasis. So it is a very severe form of disease. So similarly, like malaria, parasite migrate to liver and spleen, and it causes massive liver hepatosplenomegaly. So similarly here also there will be like atrophy of white pulp and expansion of red pulp, and there will be lots of histiocytes and plasma cells, and these histiocytes will contain the parasites. So you can see this is bone marrow aspirate. I did not get picture from the spleen, so I'm showing it from the bone marrow aspirate. So this is one of the histiocytes which is infected by Leishmania organism. So this is amastigate form of the protozoa. You can see there is one kinetoplast, and this red one is like this red arrow is the nucleus, and this black arrow is the kinetoplasm, and this is the organism. So this is amastigate form of Leishmania donovani, and so this is a big macrophages. So whole of the macrophages which has been filled, cytoplasm is filled with this form of the parasite, and this is a visceral leishmaniasis of children in the endemic area. So they will have large abdomen because of splenohepatomegaly. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the last cause is like storage disorder. So Gaucher's disease is a very important cause of massive splenomegaly. So it is a genetic disorder. There is deposition of glucose cerebroside. It is a sphingolipid which accumulates in the certain organs. So mostly the liver and the spleen get affected. So there will be massive splenohepatomegaly, and the cause is hereditary deficiency of enzyme glucose cerebrosidase. So when the enzyme is defective, this component sphingomyelin get accumulates in the white. So all this process I showed you. So what happens, the macrophages get infected, and whatever the cause, the parasite or the substances, they get deposited in the macrophages. So pathogenesis there is like because macrophages come to engulf this material which is foreign to the organ, and there is a resultant enlargement of the organ. So this cerebroside accumulates in liver, spleen, kidney. So multiple internal organs can be infected in this disease, and hepatosplenomegaly is very early and the most common symptom of Gaucher's disease. And in 90% of the cases, the patient presents with splenomegaly, and spleen can be enlarged as many like 15 times. It can be enlarged of the normal size of the spleen. So this is a splenectomy specimen from a patient affected by Gaucher's disease. You can see it's large, and can you see these are small dots? So these are all Gaucher cells. So the spleen, the surface looks very granular. Normally it is very fleshy, but here you can see the surface has become nodular and granular. So whenever there is pathology, the spleen will not look normal. So it will be granular, it will be like cheesy in tuberculosis. So it changes its appearances. So gross examination is very important in any case. So this is section from the same spleen, HNE section. So you can see there's no white pulp. So there is all the splenic pulp has been removed by these eosinophilic cells. So higher magnification, you can see this is one macrophage. So in macrophage there are material which I told you, glucocerebroside. So it imparts eosinophilic appearance, and it also, the cytoplasm is described as wrinkled paper, tissue paper cytoplasm because of this appearance. And this is because of accumulation of glucocerebroside. So splenomegaly, four important cause you have to remember. Two is infectious, malaria and Kala Azar, and one is Gaucher storage disease, and one more you have to remember, that is infectious mononucleosis, at least in the infectious cause. Okay, so I finished my lecture. Any doubts? You can ask me.